This is the Bearcast, presented by Bird Culchion Ford. Bird Culchion Ford has been in Waco since 1936. Ford is the #1 selling truck in Texas 43 years running. The Bearcast is also presented by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. Here's Craig Smoke and Grayson Grundhafer.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com. I'm Craig Smoke, Sic'Em365 writer, reporter, radio host, also joined by Grayson Grundhafer, director of broadcasting, also team and recruiting reporter for Sic'Em365. And this is the next to last podcast, thank the Lord, before the season gets underway. It has been a very long wait now at this point, and we are down to the final couple of podcasts before the 2022 Baylor Bears finally take the field for their first contest against Albany. So we are almost there, just a little bit longer and a little more time to preview, and that's some of what we will continue to do today. But Grayson, how you doing this week, man?
I'm doing good. I think we talked about this a little bit before the show, but just ready for the season to get here, right? Ready to actually see football instead of just preview it and, you know, kind of give our opinions on it, ready to actually see it in front of us. So I'm excited for that. It's been another good week. Fall camp coming to a close. It's almost over, and so I'm really excited for them to get ready for game week and get ready for the season to get rolling. Also just excited to watch college football a little bit this weekend with week 0. So a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, but I know you and I are both ready for the season to get here.
Oh, I'm going to bang my head against the wall if it doesn't get underway pretty soon, yeah. I'm more than ready at this point. I feel like I've said everything to say, you know, or looked at every angle in my own time or on TV time or whatever, and yeah, I'm ready to see some actual games at this point. You know, we've talked all about Quinn Ewers. We've talked all about Lincoln Riley. We've talked all about Dave Aranda. We've talked all about everything under the sun in college football, all this realignment. I mean, and I love it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love it, but like ultimately I do want to see games. You know, I don't want to just talk about who could be the best. I want to, I don't know, see who's the best, you know? And that was what was fun about last year, was seeing Jerry McVay make a play and seeing the Blake Shapen story come to fruition. And now I just, yeah, I'm ready to see, you know, if Blake Shapen's really the dude. And I'm ready to see if Baylor can replace people on offense and defense to make another run at a title. So, yeah, the previewing's been fun and all that. But, man, thank the Lord that some actual football is almost here so we can, you know, base it off of something that's, you know, ongoing and you know, not just speculation from, you know, a practice back in April, you know. Yeah. So we're almost there. And the fall camp, as a matter of fact, closing down. That's where we are now at this point in the shutdown mode of the fall camp schedule, where they've now gone behind closed doors and had their last open practices last week, Grayson, and now wrapping up that part of it. Media will not talk to the team again until next week, and Dave Aranda will have his Monday press conference, and then, you know, they'll have whatever media sessions that they have, and then, yeah, an actual game against Albany is right around the corner. So here we are, and kind of counting down the days till we'll get into, I guess next week really will be a full preview mode of what's going on. So this is like the last buffer week that's kind of that in-between stage. So fall camp, anything of interest coming out of that. And, you know, I know we heard from Dave Aranda last weekend, and several players have circulated, rotated through the media machine. I think we've heard from most of the position groups. So anything from last week's media or just takeaways from talking to people or something that caught your eye last week with Baylor football?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess let's just start with the simple fact that it's been pretty obvious the defense is continuing to play at a very, very high level. And I think Baylor fans should expect this defense to be, you know, I don't want to say it's going to be as good as last year, but I think it can be very, very close. I think that it probably doesn't have those couple guys where you go, man, that guy's just an absolute superstar taking over the game on the defensive side. But I think in general, they're going to be very, very solid and very deep on the defensive side, and they've played really, really well throughout fall camp. And I think based on everything I've heard, the offense, you know, still has a ways to go. And that's to be expected. I mean, this is a defense that is great. Dave Aranda's great. And when the defense knows what plays are coming, that usually makes things a lot easier on them. So I think the offense still has some work to do, but defensively, they're really emerging. The secondary, in particular, Devin Lemire, Devin Neal, making a lot of plays out there. I think you're going to see a lot of diversity in their sets as far as, when Al Walcott's completely healthy, he'll be out there. But you also have, like I said, Neal, Lemire, and Christian Morgan. Like, you got 4 guys who can really play a lot of different spots at the safety position. So I expect Devin Neal and Christian Morgan to rotate between boundary and potentially star this year, along with Al Walcott playing star. So you're going to see kind of a mixture there. And then I'm curious if Devin Neal can play a little bit of field safety as well whenever they want to give Devin Lemire a break on the backside. But very impressed by those guys. I think Baylor has solidified their safety position throughout fall camp, and I think that's a big deal going into the season, as I think everyone felt like that could be a weakness.
So I guess Christian Morgan, as the veteran, not going to be starting. We kind of know that, but still obviously will be leaned on. And I'm like everything else, man. I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to see these safeties out there. We've heard so much now, and this defensive secondary that we've talked quite a bit about. I mean, basically replacing everybody, and then the one guy that was coming back is not even a starter, in Christian Morgan. So that's obviously very interesting. You would have kind of, I guess, in some cases, penciled that in, or you thinking would generally take you that direction, but I guess that speaks to the competition that they have.
Yeah, and the thing with him is he played boundary last year, played star in the spring, so he knows those 2 positions extremely well. And so that's big. Last year, they had Jaron McVay as their kind of next guy up at the safety position. I think Christian Morgan is going to be that this year for this team, and it's just such a luxury to have a guy like that on your depth chart to come in and really fill in where needed. I think the biggest thing is, he doesn't quite have the coverage ability to play field safety in a 1 high safety look, but when you put 2 high, it gives him more of a chance back there. And I think you're going to see that a lot, that 2 high safety look where you have Devin Lemire and then you got Devin Neal or Christian Morgan next to him without Walcott roaming at star, or even Devin Neal at star as well. I could see that as a possibility. So these guys are all going to be interchangeable, and I'm very excited to see how they do going through the year. I think cornerback is still an area where I have a question mark. And I think it's kind of hard not to, right? Because when you move Al Walcott, who had been the guy from last year, who everyone was like, okay, this next year he's going to take that step to being an elite Big 12 cornerback. Well, now he's gone, and now you're relying on guys who really haven't proven a ton. Mark Milton's been there a long time, but I wouldn't say that Mark Milton is proven by any means as like a legit Big 12 cornerback. I still think he's got some stuff to prove. Lorando Johnson, he moved there, so we'll see how he ends up doing. Tevin Williams, Reggie Bush, AJ McCarty are some guys to keep an eye on, but I still think there's a lot of mix and matching at the cornerback position. That's definitely something that I think needs to be addressed before the season gets here. I think that there's still some work to do at the cornerback spot.
Well, not much time to do it in, huh?
Right. And I'm not saying that they're way behind, but I am saying I think there's still some doubts as to who are the top 3 guys. You know what I mean? I think there's still some, not concerns, but question marks, right?
Sure. Yeah.
At that spot. I did want to hit on one more position, running back.
Okay.
And I think one guy who's kind of been, everyone's been just kind of out on since last year because he didn't play very well is Quaylon Jones. And Quaylon has had a massive bounce back in fall camp. He has played really, really well. I mentioned Richard Reese last week. He's played really well also. And I think, thinking about those 2, I think they give them an opportunity if Squirrel were to miss time or anything like that. They have 2 guys who are very different as that 3rd running back. You got Quaylon, much more powerful, much stronger, just a bigger body, right, as a power back, downhill back. And then you have Richard Reese, who's more the speed back, kind of like a Squirrel, honestly, that shiftiness, one-cut running back, and then, of course, Tay McWilliams. But the emergence of Quaylon Jones has been massive, and I think if he can continue to play the way that he has in fall camp, he gives them just so much more depth at running back, which I was frankly a little concerned about. And now I'm not as concerned about. So I think that's a pretty big deal as well, that Quaylon may have finally hit his stride a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we know the Squirrel's been banged up here as of late. I posted that note in the premium section, and then, a few days later, Smokey just straight up asked Aranda about it, and we don't know. Aranda's very, I guess, not secretive or shady or anything, but he does not talk about injuries. Like, he barely says anything. Like, we could watch somebody get their head lopped off and ask him about it after the game and be like, that'd be okay. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. Yeah. We don't know yet. And he'd dance around it. And then I'd realize after he's done talking, like, he didn't say anything, basically. So, to even get what we got out of him on that front was good, just to kind of see where Squirrel is in the eyes of the team. But that's obviously going to be play it by ear. And I doubt we're going to see much of him against Albany. That's not really where his importance is going to be, is playing, Albany in week 1. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to have some other guys. I mean, it can't just be a freshman and Richard Reese that's, carrying the load, or a guy in Josh Fleeks who, at this stage is certainly a great complimentary player but hasn't shown in his time that he's ready to be give him 15 carries a game and let him go. Mm-hmm. So, take those two players out of the equation, and Squirrel to the sidelines, and you need Quaylon Jones or somebody. I mean, and obviously Tay McWilliams is like the number one guy.
Yeah.
But he's gonna need help, obviously. Abram had Treston, and Tay's gonna need somebody, and I just can't be Squirrel right out of the gates, or you wouldn't expect it to be. And again, not against Albany. Yeah, I mean, Quaylon Jones emerging would be huge news for this team. They need that, and he needs that, quite frankly, for his career at this point, because he's been around long enough that it's about that time to start kind of seeing what all the buzz was about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those were the biggest things. We talked about wide receiver a little bit last week, which is still a little bit of not a mess, but just it's a lot of, this guy might get some run, this guy might get some run. I think the more common thing is Josh Cameron's going to have a role, Monterey Baldwin's going to have a role. I think Seth Jones is starting to get to a point where it looks like he's getting close to solidifying himself with a role. Armani Winfield, he's right in that boat as well. And then you got Javon Gibson, Jalen Ellis trying to fight for playing time as well. So it's still kind of a big mess there, which is fine. You have the Albany game to figure that out, but you don't have much time after that, because you go to Provo, and you got to be able to have some guys that you trust. And thank goodness for Baylor, they have Ben Sims, who has been terrific once again during fall camp, and is probably going to be the most trusted wide receiver on this team as far as a every down chain mover. Some of the other guys hopefully will take the reins as far as deep threats and making big plays, but I think Ben Sims is going to be relied upon a ton, and he's had a very nice camp.
Yeah, he's going to be the go-to dude. I don't think there's any doubts about that. So here we are a week prior, or a little over a week, and still have no idea what this wide receiver core is going to look like, and really no idea what the secondary is going to look like. And so therefore, you see why I'm maybe a little bit more on the pessimistic side of things when it comes to just 10 wins and boom, let's go. I mean, at first it was the road challenges that really kept me from going all in on double digits in the regular season. Now, overall, yeah, I still think that's very doable, because we saw them do, a great job of winning games 11 and 12 last year. But to get to 10 wins in the regular season, again, is going to be really difficult with their schedule and with the question marks that they have. And I know they had some last year, but yeah, quite the challenge in front of them. And again, part of why, we've been talking about wide receivers for 17 weeks in a row, and that's why I want to just see him now. Okay, who's the dude? Do they have a guy that's going to step up, or are we a year away from this really young core being able to contribute in a meaningful fashion? And I think we've looked at it from a lot of different angles, and now we just need to see him out there. Is Seth Jones going to be that dude? Is it going to be a Hal Presley? Is it... we know Ben. I think we've seen enough Ben Sims to know we feel all good about that. But
and Drake Dabney,
but that's two tight ends. Where's the rest of it coming from? But Albany will be a good test run, you would think.
Yeah, and they're gonna have to get a lot of guys reps. I see all those receivers getting reps in that game, because you gotta see what you have, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of times those guys don't flash until games, sadly, because you really need guys to flash more often than that. But if you get to a game and then all of a sudden you look up and you got Javon Gibson going for 100 yards and a touchdown, you might be like, oh, okay, so maybe he's more of a dude than maybe we thought, and maybe he's a starting receiver. So I'm very curious. I think right now, if I were to guess, it'd be Hal Presley, Monterey Baldwin, and Josh Cameron as the three guys. Those seem to be the guys that I've kind of heard about the most consistently, and also just I feel the most confident in early in the season.
All right, anything else from fall camp?
No, not really. I think those are the main things. Talked about a few of them, and we talked about a few last week as well. So I think that's a good point. We'll wrap it up next week as we, kind of preview the season and what we're expecting, and kind of just wrapping up fall camp a little bit heading into the year.
Yeah, it's knocking on the door, that very first game, and I'm ready to fling that door open and let it in. Let Albany come rolling into Waco, see some actual action, be able to break it down and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, literally, and then turn around and then it's BYU and it's on after that. And there's no real letdowns, but that's why we talk about it all year long, is to get to this point. So I'm more than ready, if you can't tell, to see the ball roll out at McLean. Fall camp's been fun. It's been enlightening in some ways. But, it's time to get some questions answered and see how Dave Aranda and staff do after a banner year, and how can they possibly follow that up. And quite frankly, there's tons more storylines. I mean, this is definitely not going to be the second of the next 10 years of this staff's going to be together. I mean, I think that's very clear. This is a staff that's probably going to get a lot of attention, already has gotten a lot of attention. And, the more success they have, the more you're going to hear names like Jeff Grimes being brought up all across the country. And that's great. They've got an incredible staff, and I'm ready to see them back out there doing their thing once again with this young group of players. But good mix of veterans as well, and that's where the optimism comes from. Just all that combined together. So, pretty soon we'll see Blake Shapen out there, game number 1, and see what he can do for 12 weeks at the helm after, what a story that turned out to be for him last year with Gary Bohannon starting, and then Blake eventually helping lead them to a Big 12 title. What's in store this year? We're about to find out. So, elsewhere outside of fall camp, like I said, they shut it down, so it's behind closed doors for the next week and a half or so. But you had a couple of preseason All-Americans announced, Connor Galvin and Apu Ika, picking up second-team honors from the Associated Press preseason All-American team. So Galvin now in his 5th year, Ika a junior. They've been pretty much constants across most preseason teams that I've seen. And if you were to probably pick who are the most recognized Bears at the end of this season, I think these would be two very solid candidates, to have near the top of the list. But, been racking up some honors. Others have as well. But in the latest, it is Ika and Galvin with preseason AP All-American and honors.
Yeah, and this is just a great honor for them. They've been really great Bears, and I think they're two guys who, like you said, are the most recognizable. And I think it just kind of solidifies things with Baylor's offensive and defensive lines. They're very, very good this year, and they're going to be counted on throughout the entire season. Apu is such a luxury, and I don't know that people really recognize how good he is and how impactful he is, just because you're not going to see, 20 sacks or whatnot from him. But to have an elite nose tackle like him is just a complete game changer. And we saw that last year. His impact was massive. And he's going to have that same impact this year. So very happy somebody recognized that out of him. And then as far as Connor Galvin goes, he's been phenomenal since the moment he stepped on campus. He took his lumps as a freshman, as most guys do, because he was forced into early action, and he's gotten better every single year. So very impressed by him, and very impressed by both these guys. And who knows, maybe Baylor can add another AP All-American before the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, Dylan Doyle is potentially that type of guy. I don't know about too many others outside of that. But, yeah, Galvin in his last run as well, another person or aspect of this team to really appreciate now for the next few months, because he's definitely going to be a guy who we're talking about, next April in the draft and all that. So this is his last big run. And with Ika, it could very well be his last big run as well as a junior. All that remains to be seen. And that's down the line, but just for me, just kind of appreciating every Saturday that we do get. Like, that's one of the things I'll be, hey, this staff is incredible, and I'm going to enjoy them while I can. And then same thing with some of these players, and those are definitely two of those players. It's their last run in green and gold, potentially.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Dwell. I also think Ben Sims could find his name in there as well. He's kind of the other one, just if he gets enough
Sims,
targets.
Doyle, Galvin. I mean, really, those guys are all no-brainers, I think, because they're all seniors or fifth-year seniors. Ika is the one who's a junior,
right.
So in theory, he could have more time. That all remains to be seen. That's all TBD. But, nose tackles don't grow on trees like him, and if he stays healthy, you think he's going to have a pretty productive year, and most people know about him at this point. So, just enjoy these guys while they're out there because, it's kind of weird now. Jalen Petrie's no longer running out there, Terrell Bernard, and as long as they were around, it still feels like it was kind of quick that they're suddenly not around anymore. So
that is crazy
definitely,
to think about.
Enjoy these guys while you can. Elsewhere, a little recruiting news on the football side of things.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of a reset in the 2024 class because I know Garrett and I were talking a little bit earlier, and so I wanted to kind of bring it up a little bit, but I keep getting all these questions about DJ Lagway, the quarterback out of Willis, and
legacy.
Yeah, he's a legacy. He's a Baylor legacy. His dad went to Baylor, and so I think obviously a lot of people want to know what's going on with his recruitment, but at this very moment, I don't know that Baylor is truly a contender right now in his recruitment. I think there's a long way to go in his recruitment, but right now it just seems like he's trending in other directions. And, that happens at times, and honestly, that's happened to Baylor a lot with legacies, but I just wanted to kind of put an emphasis on the fact that Baylor's offered 4 other quarterbacks in the 2024 class. I'd say Dylan Raiola is committed to Ohio State, so that one probably not realistic, but the other 3, Marcos Davia, you got Mabry Matwire, and you got Trey Owens. You got 3 guys who Baylor really likes, and they're 3 guys who I think Baylor would be very happy with landing in their 2024 class. So all hope is not lost at the quarterback position, even if they don't land DJ. But I think a lot of people are putting all their eggs in this DJ Lagway basket, and I'm just not sure if that's the most realistic scenario at this time. And I also think it's important to go look at the other 2024 quarterbacks because Baylor's offered some really good ones, and the state of Texas has much better quarterbacks in this class than they did in the 2023 class, where we know it was pretty much just Jackson Arnold and Austin Novosad. And so I think that's an important topic to talk about just because I think everyone's got this impression that Baylor has to land DJ Lagway in the 2024 class when that's just not necessarily the case. Baylor got their guy in 2023. They're going to get another guy who's probably going to be more of a project, a guy that might have to wait a little while before his time, and that might be what they roll with. And so just keep expectations tempered a little bit at this time. I know Baylor's still recruiting him, don't get me wrong, but right now I think he's trending in other directions.
All right. Certainly there will be some disappointed to hear that, but recruiting's the long game. So, he's not signing this December or February. A lot can change between now and, whenever Lagway, I guess a year from December, finally gets a chance to properly sign. So,
right. And it's just where things are trending. It's just kind of where things are at right now. On the flip side, in 2023, Baylor didn't offer a lot of guys. They just heavily targeted Austin Novosad, and then that was it. And so I don't think that's going to be the case in the 2024 class. They've extended more offers, built more relationships. So it's a little bit more spread out than it was in last year's class.
Yep. So I've definitely seen him, all over Twitter. There was like a video he put out the other day. His father, had Baylor mentions or had pictures of him and his dad growing up and all that. So yeah, there's definitely that very prominent tie-in, but as you said, it doesn't mean that necessarily that's going to just translate to him doing the same thing his dad did.
And it hasn't really been the case for Baylor.
Yeah, I don't even know when that's actually happened for Baylor. Honestly, I think they're like 0 for 15 since I've been around at least in trying to land legacies. So that's, even when they were like flying high, they, and they are now once again, but that's nothing new, no matter what time period we're really talking about. Strange, but it's the way it's worked out so far. So we'll definitely keep track on DJ Lagway and plenty of other players in the 2024 class. Again, a long way to go to get there. Meanwhile, men's basketball, no, Grayson.
Yeah, so I think this was a pretty impactful note. Hillcrest Prep out of Arizona. So this is in Phoenix, Arizona. Jason Asamoah, 2024 small forward. He's 6'8", 190. Very, very interesting prospect. A guy Baylor offered a while ago, but he released his top 8, and Baylor made his top 8. They were inside his top 8 schools, along with Memphis, Ohio State, Arizona State, Oregon, Stanford, Kansas, and LSU. Very diverse list there from the west to the east. Lots of different conferences represented as well. But he's currently the number 12 player in the entire country for the 2024 class. A 5-star prospect according to composite rankings, and a guy that right now I would say is trending Baylor's direction. Ashley Hodge has a prediction in. 247 has some predictions in as well. It just seems like things are trending for Baylor as they look to try to start the 2024 class. But he would be a huge one. I mean, he's got 22 offers, is a guy that's been a riser throughout the summer and the spring, and is a guy who I think a lot of schools want. But Baylor looking like they're in a great position. And I believe he's scheduled for his official visit this weekend. I actually think is when he's going to take his official visit to Baylor. So that's a big note as well, as Baylor could potentially land him after this weekend, which imagine the start to the 2024 class with that.
Yeah, he is scheduled to visit this weekend, and based on his lists, down to 8 schools: Baylor, Arizona State, Kansas State, Ohio State, Oregon, Stanford, Kansas, LSU. That's not – how you going to have 2 posts next to each other that have different teams? Come on now. Let's look at his actual graphic. Memphis, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, Stanford, LSU, Kansas, Baylor. Those are the 8 for Jason Asamoah, 5-star in the 2024 class, as you mentioned, from Hillcrest Prep. So, yeah, that would be massive. I see that he's definitely warming on the Baylor side of things as that starts to, get out there amongst the recruiting systems. So that seems to be the trend. And, yeah, that would be massive news for Scott Drew and company, who have kind of, they've just sort of always remained in the news cycle. But I guess it's been a little kind of quiet, I guess a tad bit. But I mean, there had to be at some point, and it's about to get ramped right back up, especially if they can land a guy like Asamoah soon.
Yeah, and in the 2023 class, they already have Jacoby Walter committed and Miro Little. They're the number 9 class in the country right now in 2023. They might not even take another freshman in that class. Maybe they'll take one more, but no one committed yet in 2024. So this would be a great start. Another player with length, which we know they love. They love guys who are long, can guard, can shoot. And Asamoah looks like a guy who could be a pro. So yeah, that'd be a tremendous start. And we know they're just ramping it up on the recruiting side of things. They've been landing guys who fit their culture extremely well while also being extremely talented. We haven't even really talked a lot about basketball, but I have high hopes and expectations for this team next year. So if they can keep this momentum going, recruiting is just going to continue to take off.
Yep, they are on a good run, and that run, despite losing coaches and guys going off the NBA, looks to continue, and that's what you want when you build up a program the way Scott Drew has. So yeah, keep an eye out on the 2024 class and some potential movement there, but the good kind. And Scott Drew just keeps doing his thing. So good to see them continuing to have a good amount of momentum, even though the season's still a little bit of a ways away, although not that far away at this point. Does the name Jalen Garth ring a bell at all from recruiting? Just curious.
Slightly.
Offensive lineman.
Familiar. Yeah.
Oh, I was just wondering if I don't remember if Baylor was ever even involved with him at all, but he just entered the transfer portal.
From where?
Texas.
Ooh, okay.
So, yeah, 4-star in the 2020 class, played in 2 games. That was just randomly came across my feed, so I couldn't recall if that was a name that would ring a Baylor bell very much, but
they offered him, but I don't know that there was ever much traction.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I wasn't trying to make this a story or anything. It was just a very random, like I said.
He had Alabama, Texas, Nebraska.
I remember
Ohio
his name. I remember his name, and I think he was part of their big beefing up the offensive line class. So
Neches Grove. Yeah, which is where Roshan Johnson played.
And he's turned out to be a freaking stud.
He is. Great running back, but this one, not quite the same.
No, but yeah, I just saw that come across. So that offensive line, they've been really beefing up the last couple years. There's one departure, and
got passed up by a freshman, I bet.
Probably. So, anyways, there's a quick attrition note out of the current Big 12.
Ooh, I got another just quick news nugget.
Sure.
Tom Herman will be calling college football games for CBS Sports this fall. It's an interesting Texas news nugget too.
Yeah. I don't hate Tom Herman. It's weird. I feel like I'm supposed to, but I don't really hate the guy. I think that I'd probably like him a lot more if he had never gone to Austin, just because I think he sort of had found a good little pocket there at Houston and really could have taken full advantage. But I get the allure of going, and doing what he did. But it did seem like when he got there, probably a lot of his worst qualities came to the surface pretty quickly. And, I don't know. I thought a little less of him, but he's a good coach, and like I said, I don't hate the guy, so good for him.
Yeah, he just doesn't seem like the biggest personality. You know what I mean? That's not what I would say is his best quality. So I'm very curious how he does. I'm sure he'll be great. I'm sure he knows the X's and O's extremely well, but I hope we get to see his personality shine through. Now, I wouldn't have said Urban Meyer had the most amazing personality either, and I thought he was really good on television.
And he's
so
back.
We'll see.
And he's back because we got to give him more opportunities. Yeah, couldn't have anybody else in that seat, could we, Fox? Had to be Urban Meyer. Give him another break in life. But yeah, good for Tom Herman. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out because I don't necessarily just think of him as a broadcast type, but. And for all those, Nick Saban's retiring soon, a big contract extension for him. So that's a fun day. I can't wait to check the Auburn message boards later on, or most of the SEC for that matter. One quick note, and there will be more changes, I'm sure, in the preseason NFL scope of things. I'm not going to get in-depth on some injuries that happened this past weekend, but weekend number 2 of 3 for Baylor players in the preseason wasn't nearly as fun as week number 1 when everybody was pretty healthy and scoring touchdowns. A couple of rookies got banged up. I'll have more on that in an article, but there was one release, and there might be more by the time the article posts. I don't know. I'm sure there actually will be because they're only dropping another 5 each team. So in theory, Baylor could still come out of that relatively unscathed, but next week it's just going to be a freaking bloodbath across the entire league because everybody's going to be dropping, 20-something guys next week. So that's going to be ugly for a lot of players, and I'm sure there will be a Baylor player or two that gets caught up in that just massive amount of cuts. But this week, with it just being 5 per team, I don't know how many we'll see. But we did see one already, and that was Jaron McVay, cut by the LA Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. So did get to see that, in his final game with the Rams that they played the Texans, and I saw a picture of him and Petrie out on the field together, either in the pre or post game. And they both had big smiles on their faces and their NFL uniforms on. So that was a pretty cool moment to see captured. And, not a guy that you thought was going to have a big, long NFL career to begin with. I was actually even surprised that he got to the signed free agent in training camp, to the second round of cuts, honestly. I just didn't, really have that in mind. But I think that in itself is kind of a win. And, obviously there's a lot of other leagues to play in, and he could always get another NFL opportunity. But he's also definitely got the brain to go be successful outside of football as well. So I'm not worried about Jaron McVay as a point. But, yes, unfortunately, he did get cut by the Rams yesterday. So one less player as of today on that Baylor NFL list.
Yeah, like you said, not surprising, but good for him that he got to play against Petrie in an NFL game. That's really cool. Kind of on the downside, the Tyquan Thornton injury is a big bummer. Collarbone injury, I believe, is what it was. So he's going to miss a lot of his rookie season, it seems. And that's so terrible because I think he was probably having the best camp of anyone that played at Baylor, from what I could tell. Not including Xavier Howard, but I'm saying in this class, he seemed to be the best and the most sure thing outside of Jalen Petrie to be a starter. But Tyquan was really making some noise, potentially being the wide receiver 1 in New England. And now he's going to have to wait a little bit before he gets his chance to make his debut in a regular season game. So I felt really bad for him. It seems like things are not trending great for Abram Smith right now. For the Saints, it looks like Tony Jones, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara all ahead of him. So now he's going to have to work to try to get that 4th spot and just make the roster. Meaning he's probably going to have to make somewhat of an impact on special teams if he wants to make it. And then the Ebner injury also. He got a high ankle sprain injury, and so now I'm a little nervous about if he's going to be able to sustain success and actually be able to continue playing, in the early part of the season. So I'm curious about him, and it came at the same time as Khalil Herbert getting injured as well. So Ebner was actually going to have an opportunity to start and play a ton of snaps, and instead he got hurt, and Darrington Evans got to come in. So now I think his projection making the team is a little bit up in the air, but based on how he's done throughout camp, I still think he's going to make it, but still a bummer.
Yep, so some good and some bad news, and we will see the cuts later on today, and by Wednesday morning, I should have a piece out that's kind of clearing the air on where everybody stands, but we'll definitely have to take Jeremy McVay off that list, and hopefully not too many others, but then, again, next week, the real big cuts going down from, was it 85 to 53 or 80 to 53? I can't quite remember. I think they went 90 to 85 last week, so 85 to 80 I think is what it is, and then 80 to 53 next Tuesday. So, 27 players off of every team is going to be getting cut. 27 players off 32 teams each. So, that'll be quite the mass exodus from the rosters in the NFL. But that's what we do every year, so be interesting to track, but best of luck to Jeremy McVay. All right, elsewhere, I think that's about it. Let's get into the mailbag and start off with Scotty B, top 5 offenses for the Big 12 going into this season.
Yeah, I got Baylor, Oklahoma, Kansas State. And then after that, are we talking statistics? Like, how many points do you put up? Because if that's the case, then you might see like a TCU or a Tech get in there just based on putting up points. But I think efficiency, this is a good offense. I think Oklahoma State will be 4th. And then I think it'll probably be TCU 5th just because one thing I do trust Sonny Dykes to do is score points. That doesn't mean they're going to win football games, but I think they will score some points. So those would be my top 5.
Who'd you say again?
Baylor, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and TCU.
I think I'm. UT's O-line is problematic, but I would hope that they'd have some type of explosive offense. I might consider them there.
They should be in there, yeah.
But elsewhere. I mean, Tech with the Kitley offense should be pretty explosive. They just named their quarterback. It's going to be Tyler Shuck from Oregon, a couple years ago as of Oregon. Got hurt last year in Lubbock. And then West Virginia with Graham Harrell, Neil Brown. I mean, there would definitely be some contenders, but, I mean, those are a solid 5. I might switch around Texas for, TCU or Oklahoma State maybe. Yeah. Those would be possibly the moves I'd make, but outside of that, I mean – you can only have 5. Right. So that's kind of the year we're looking at in the Big 12, where there are a lot of expectations for better offenses. And so with Baylor being a defensive team, but also having what you hope is a pretty explosive offense, it's going to make for some interesting football this year. Which non-conference game for Baylor men's basketball and women's basketball intrigues you the most? For the men, I say Gonzaga and South Dakota, or a road game against Marquette. For the women, I say Maryland because of how close it was last year, though it could be Michigan if we play them in the Gulf Coast Showcase.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by, obviously, the Gonzaga game is number 1 on the list. I think Virginia in Vegas would be another really good one, too. I think those two cultures really will show up well in that game. As far as the women's basketball side, I guess I'd probably go with the Michigan one that you mentioned as well, Scotty B. If they're able to play them, I think that'll be the best matchup on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, those should be pretty good. I would say Maryland makes the most sense. I'm sitting here looking quickly at their schedules, and Who'd you say for the men?
Gonzaga and
and
Virginia. Virginia's interesting, but Gonzaga's the headliner. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, number 3, or I guess they were number 3 last year when the Lady Bears played Maryland and lost in a narrow game, 79-76. I was looking at those last year's schedule, but yeah. Definitely looking forward to Gonzaga and the Baylor men. That ought to be great. And with Nikki Collin and the Baylor women, should be an interesting follow-up. But, again, Maryland in late November seems like a pretty safe bet on a non-con game to have circled for sure. Thanks, Scotty. Brown BW, who will get the most carries besides our top 2? I'm thinking of our running backs stay healthy. Fleeks might be the guy, but if we have significant injury, they may not redshirt Reese and turn him loose. Yeah,
I actually don't think Fleeks is going to be one of the guys that gets the most carries. I think it's going to be Quaylen or Richard Reese, and I'm kind of leaning towards Richard Reese at the moment. I just think he's explosive, and he has crazy speed, and just his one-cut ability is awesome. The thing with Quaylen is Quaylen's going to move the chains, and I think he'll be more of a short yardage back who will wear on teams. So maybe he ends up getting more carries, but if I were to bet right now, I think I'd go with Richard Reese.
Yeah, I'll side with you on that. I mean, you obviously have heard some scuttlebutt about him, and I've seen him out there a little bit, and he looks good. I mean, the only thing is he is just a freshman, kind of throwing him into the fire. But yeah, he seems like he's the best example of squirrel not named squirrel to kind of do what they want to do.
He is old for a freshman, I believe. I think he's more like 19 or 20. Like, he's older for his grade, so he's not necessarily the age of a normal freshman, which is good. He might be able to get on the field earlier.
Yeah, excited to see him, and he'll get some burn. I think we'll definitely see him get some burn against Albany and elsewhere, but looking forward to watching him right out of the gates. Yankee Bear, when interviews are done between media and players, coaches, why does John Warner always go first? Great question. I don't know why. I think at this point it's just some sort of weird tradition, but it's basically been that way since I got here, and I've been here now for several years. And it's just always kind of been that way. No other explanation outside of that. I've definitely interrupted that on more than one occasion, intentionally and not intentionally. So I like to rattle cages sometimes, but yeah, that's just kind of how it always goes.
I mean, it used to be, I know when Taylor Bryan was here as the SID, it'd be like, okay, John, start us off.
Yeah.
So like, that's how it ended up being. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that John's always right next to the person.
Right.
Whereas all the camera people are kind of, back a little bit. And so I think it's just natural for the guy standing right next to him to get a question in.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah. That's the best way to explain it, I think, is just kind of just what happens. And he's always right next to whoever it is that's talking, so that makes some sense. But yeah, that's just how it sort of goes. Your daily cup check, start, bench, cut, RG3, Johnny Football, Tim Tebow.
Yeah, I'm starting RG3, and I'm benching Johnny Football, and I'm cutting Tim Tebow. And I know this is going to rattle a lot of cages. I understand that. But for me, if RG3 or Johnny Football had that Florida team, they would have won championship as well. I firmly believe that. Tebow was amazing, great story, impactful college football player, one of the most impactful ever. But his team was really loaded. I think the other two quarterbacks had to do more with less.
Yeah, I'd start RG3. I'd bench Tebow, and I'd cut Johnny Football. Johnny culture killer. No, I mean, he obviously was good for the culture back then at A&M for the most part, and he was amazing in what he did. But, Tebow's got 2 national titles under his belt. No matter if, Aaron Hernandez or the Pouncey Twins or Percy Harvin or whoever, I mean, every national championship team, like, we don't negate, Miami because they had 25 first-rounders on their 2001 team. Like, you wouldn't, dismiss Willis McGahee as, would you?
I mean, I would say that Ken Dorsey was really good, but do I think Ken Dorsey was like a surreal talent?
That's
one of the
fair.
Best college football players I've ever seen? No. You know what I mean? Like, you can still discount. It's like if Tim Tebow was at Baylor, is he carrying them really far? I don't think so. If RG3 was on that Florida team, would they have won the championship? I think so.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's.
I'm not arguing Tebow and RG3 though. I'm arguing Tebow and Johnny Football. But I see your point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even Johnny, his first year, my goodness, that A&M team was good, but no one thought they were going to win anything, and they ended up being, by the end of the year, they were an early season loss away from being in the national championship with that team. I know he had Mike Evans, so that helps. But good God, their defense was terrible in the SEC too, which you usually can't get away with that.
Yep. So, I'd still go Tebow over Johnny. Johnny was great, but, Tebow did, like you said, I mean, Ken Dorsey didn't necessarily put Miami over the top, but, Tebow was no slouch either. I don't want to totally negate that he was, just riding the coattails.
For sure.
Mikey, hey, fellas, thanks again for the great work as always. How many quarters do y'all expect the first team to play this first game?
Whew, not very many. I'll say they'll play quarter and a half.
I'll say they'll play 2.5 quarters. I think most guys are going to play at least the first half, I would assume, and then maybe a little bit of the third. I mean, there's a lot of young guys out there. I mean, I understand trying to protect your players. You're not going to have like your O-line out there first team starting the fourth quarter, I wouldn't think, but you got to give them some run. And I would think at least the first half and maybe a little bit of the third, but we will see. This should be one of those games where that's basically naming when you want to take starters out, though. And if it's not, then that would be for some reason very nightmare scenario. I can't foresee one that would be like that. But
I think you're probably right. It's probably more like a half now that I think about it, because they do play BYU the next week. It's not like they get to play Texas State, so they do need more reps. So I think it'll probably be more like a half. Maybe they leak into the third, but hopefully not longer than that. They really don't need Blake Shapen run around out there in the third quarter or fourth quarter.
Right. Do y'all expect this year's BYU game to be tougher, closer than last year? I would have preferred having the Texas State game before BYU for extra practice.
I agree. I think the Texas State game would have been better to have there. I think it will be closer because last year the score was not as close as the final score was. I think it ended up being 14 points. That was pretty much a 20-point game once you got into the fourth quarter. Baylor was clearly better. I think this year will probably be, 10-point win for Baylor, something along those lines. So closer. A little tougher.
I would think a little tougher. Quarterback, Jaron Hall's older. Puka Nakua's back. He's another year older. It's in Provo. I mean, I think that there's a lot of reasons why this should be tougher than last year, but it's a winnable game. I don't know what I was trying to go the opposite with, but it's a winnable game. Still remains that way. I still think Baylor will be favorites, but definitely tougher to get out of there. With last year, they had a little bit of breathing room. Ryan Allen Long, I'm looking forward to Baylor at BYU this year. Being able to see their stadium in Provo, Lavelle Edwards Stadium, looks like a tremendous setting, and the weather should be great. This trip got me thinking about my college football stadium bucket list. My remaining bucket list includes Florida, the Rose Bowl, and the Big House, just to name a few. Which stadiums are on your guys' list? Thanks. I will hang up and listen.
Yeah, I think the Horseshoe and the Big House are both on my list. So that's Michigan, Ohio State. I would love to go to either of those. I've never been to either one, so those would be really cool. You mentioned the Rose Bowl. I think that'd be fun as well. And really all of those SEC schools. Like, I've been to Kyle Field. It was pretty cool, but going to LSU, I haven't been to an LSU game, and I know those get crazy, so that'd be a lot of fun as well. That's probably on my list. Trying to think, is there any? Oh, maybe Autzen. Autzen would be cool too, up in Oregon.
Yeah, I'd like to see Nebraska and just the Big Red Sea. Like to see the ones that you mentioned, I think that's everybody's. If you haven't been to those places, those are on your list. But I'd say my top two would probably be Nebraska, Notre Dame, and then after that, the ones that you mentioned. Not Florida necessarily, although the Swamp would be cool. It'd probably be like tier 3. Nebraska, same. Notre Dame, and then Rose Bowl, Horseshoe and Big House, and then getting to tier 3 and getting to some of those others. But those are all cool venues, and definitely have not seen any of those just yet. So hopefully I can change that in the next few years. Mode Up 9 updates on Squirrel.
We kind of talked about him earlier. I think that I think he might play in the Albany game, but I would guess that he's probably going to be more geared up and ready to go for the BYU game. I don't see them giving him his normal amount of touches against Albany, even if he can play in that game. We'll see.
Yeah, nothing to report. Again, Aranda doesn't really say a whole lot about injuries. He said what he said about Squirrel last week and just kind of being precautionary and, taking it easy. And it's frustrating, but yeah, I would be shocked if we see him against Albany. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why? Unless you're confident enough in his health. But then again, you can't really pick and choose. He'll be healthy this game against this team. So I mean, it is what it is, and you're just gonna have to throw him out there at some point. But nothing. Pray. Yeah, I mean, basically just fingers crossed and hope that he's okay. But the good news is that they did have an MRI, which is why the scuttlebutt was out there that he was hurt, and then I finally saw him that day in the indoor after not seeing him out there on the field. And I only put that on the private message boards. I didn't run to Twitter and say he's hurt or anything like that. But, clearly, it's of note because he's supposed to be the starting running back this year or, one of the starting running backs. And when you've had the injury history that he's had, I mean, it's notable when he's sitting there off to the side, and granted it was a rain day, but that wasn't because it was a rain day. That's because it could have been dry and, 190 degrees outside, and he still would have been in that indoor doing those drills because he was hurt. So, yeah, remains to be seen, but nothing past what Dave Aranda said last weekend. So, fingers crossed. He deserves a full season, man. He really does. I really hope he gets it this year. Coach DeBroker, I have nothing, just ready for the season to start. You and me both, Coach.
Same.
Just a bear in frog world. Seems like we haven't heard from Jeff Grimes much. Any intel as to what the big chef is cooking in the kitchen? How would you describe his place as a leader on the team in relation to how him and DA work together?
Okay, so, intel, I think they're definitely changing up the offense a little bit. It's still a wide zone, don't get me wrong, but I think they're going to attack the vertical parts of the field much more. I think you're going to see Blake Shapen take many more chances. I think they're going to create more time in the pocket for him to take shots deep downfield as well. I think you're going to see a lot of play action, just like you saw last year, a physical running game. But I think the explosivity of the offense specifically is what they're working on heading into this year. As far as the leader on the team, he's a leader with the offense, of course. Him and Eric Mateos specifically, really, I think they have a great relationship, and I think that really helps things, along with Sean Bell. Just that whole staff, really cohesive, and I think he's a leader with it, but I think he allows his coaches to really develop those position groups extremely well, which I think helps. Anytime you have, the head guy handing out these responsibilities, but allowing those guys to really work on their craft is a big deal. And so I think that's what he's done. I wouldn't necessarily say he's like some dictator or whatnot on the offensive side. He's definitely not. He's a very good offensive coordinator in my eyes because of that.
Yeah, he's a head coach the next couple of years somewhere. Yep. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And he carries himself like a future head coach and like somebody who's built for that job. And I think there's a lot of respect with him and Aranda. And, Aranda made an incredible move in being able to get him and Eric Mateos, and obviously played big roles in them winning a title last year. So, yeah, I think the relationship's great, but Grimes is like a lot of other guys on staff. That's why I keep saying, enjoy it while it lasts, because there's too much star power. There's too many guys who are going to be head coaches in the future, and it's just impossible to keep that all together. But the great news is that Dave Aranda tree is going to explode, in short fashion. But yeah, Grimes is the real deal, and part of the reason why you haven't heard much is because they don't talk. They don't talk in the preseason. There's no assistant coach interviews, just like last year. So that worked out well for them last year. They're going with that same method. So the next time we hear from Jeff Grimes would probably be like bowl practices or something like that, way far out. But no, he's doing the damn thing and doing it well. Northwestern Bear, this is a comment more than a question. The talent you guys exhibit, ability to recruit impactful guests right now, and your national connections speak to the journey we are all in together. That is Baylor becoming a recognizable brand that fosters excellence and a winning culture. Your team comes across as a bunch of pros. Very impressive. Thank you for helping the school we love with your professionalism. Well, I'm not sure what that's in relation to. I guess Sic'Em 365 radio and this podcast and everything, and if that's correct, I believe that it is, then thank you very much, Northwestern Bear. Really appreciate those kind words. Flomo Mike, in the football recruiting world, which schools besides Baylor do you have the most respect for and least respect for based on their tactics? I don't know. I'll excuse myself here because I really don't know enough about, at this stage, what everybody's doing behind the scenes and all that, and I don't even know how much you could really shed light on that.
That's true. I guess if it's all speculation, I guess we shouldn't say, but I don't.
Oh, I really don't know.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're basing it on something, then go right ahead.
I just don't have a ton of respect for, like, that little situation that happened in the SEC between Jimbo and Nick Saban where, you know, you got two guys who are acting completely innocent in all that they've ever done. And if you want to stand by that, that's cool. That's fine. But I don't believe that for 1 second, that none of them have ever done anything wrong and that Jimbo knows nothing about NIL and that, you know, then Jimbo talking about Nick Saban as well. I don't have a lot of respect for that beef because, you know, one's trying to kind of out the other while the other one's trying to say, oh, I'm an angel. And I don't respect that from programs. Now, as far as most respect, I think I can kind of maybe get more specific on that. I respect Clemson a lot. I think that's a very respectable program, kind of their journey and how they've built a program and established something that has turned them into basically a blue blood in the sport. Really impressed by what they've done. They've always been very high on my respect list. I really respect Utah as well. They've kind of finally reached this point under Kyle Whittingham where they've always won, but now they're winning even bigger and have an opportunity to win at a much higher level. So those are two teams that I kind of point out that I kind of look at and go, you know, kind of similar culture to Baylor a little bit, and what they're building kind of reminds me a little bit of Baylor as well, and I respect that.
You clearly haven't met Utah fans on Twitter, however, because they are the absolute.
They're the worst.
Oh, they're not great. They're really not, and they embrace that. So yeah, that's. I mean, to the point where there are some people that very tongue in cheek will say, like, "Yeah, I wouldn't want them in the Big 12 just based simply off their fan base."
Gotcha. What'd you do? Say they're going 11-1?
I haven't said anything. I've just observed how some others have had interactions with them, and you know, obviously. It's not like the entire group, but they've got enough people that are rowdy enough, I guess, that there's a reputation that's grown about Utah fans. But you're right about Whittingham and the program. It's not a knock on them at all.
Yeah, they're going to change their tune when Oregon leaves to the Big Ten.
Oh, no, they're very confident that they have nothing to worry about, Grayson. I'm telling you right now, go check out Utah fans.
Wow.
It's a whole experience. And Nibel, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, so apologies. Big 12 win totals, favorite over bet and favorite under bet, not Baylor. Man, I'm such not a gambler, but for reference, and he lists out the various over-unders for the Big 12 schools here.
Yeah, so Baylor is a great bet. We've talked about them a lot, 7.5 wins. I know you said not Baylor, but they are a great bet, just confirming that. My favorite under bet is Texas. I don't think they're winning 8.5 games. I think they're more like an 8-4, 7-5 team this year, so they're probably my favorite under. My favorite over bet, I think it's Kansas State. I think at 6.5, that just seems far too low. I think they're at worst a 7-5 team, probably going to finish 8-4. So I love that bet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Texas at 8.5, that just seems really...
It's second best odds in the conference.
Yeah.
That's
if
crazy.
Nayor was healthy, I could at least shoot on it a little bit more. But
And they play Bama. So they're one of the only teams that has a for sure
I'm
loss.
not buying Texas at 8.5 wins, so I'll go under on that. And then over bet, kind of staring at West Virginia for some reason.
Do it. It's for me, it's either K-State or West Virginia is my favorite over.
Yeah, what the hell? I'll go West
one.
Virginia. Yeah, I mean, I think they should at bare minimum be a bowl team. They made a bowl game last year, and I know they lost some players, but yeah, you brought in JT Daniels, and there's all this hype now. I mean, you should dang sure get to a bowl game. So yeah, I'll go West Virginia on the over, or on the under bet, I guess. Over bet, yeah. So yeah, there you go. I'll go West Virginia there. Doc Crow, if you could schedule any team for home and away in any sport, who would it be?
Texas A&M.
In what? Football?
Yeah, football for sure. I just think that would be a lot of fun. I love, it's not necessarily the biggest known rivalry, but it is a little bit of a rivalry, and I would love to play A&M again. I think, yeah, like I said, it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of choices here. I don't know. I think Notre Dame rolling into Waco would be kind of cool, but like I also had Ohio State flash through my head. So I mean, any number of teams I think would be cool. I don't really have a man, I would kill to see that. A&M, I know that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. And I think it probably might be like the fan poll top vote getter. But yeah, I think like a Notre Dame, like some program of that, or Ohio State, like that sort of stature rolling into McLean Stadium and having to play in front of 45,000 people would be kind of fun.
They have Oregon and Auburn on their futures, right?
Yeah.
So those will be two
They're
really
close.
good ones. Yeah,
they're close enough that they'll definitely be the biggest teams that have rolled through in quite a while. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I think like those big top brands would be pretty cool. Or Alabama, like that would be awesome to see them roll into McLean. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's at. Does KRD keep his red shirt this year? Talking about Kyan Roberts Day.
Yeah, I think he redshirts this season.
Based on what I've seen, yeah, he looks like he's just. I don't know that he's found his home just yet.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's like found that spot for him where he's going to be to the end of his career just yet. He's a work in progress, but yeah, I think he redshirts. Is Apu gone after this year?
I think so.
Probably just because of where he plays, and he seems like a guy who's not like bound for 5 years in college or want to stick around. If he's got the opportunity to go, I think he'll go. And again, that position is very unique. So
what does he have to gain? Like everyone knows what he is. You know what I mean? Like he's a nose tackle.
He's not getting any taller.
No, he's not getting taller. Even if he gets more sacks, he still is filled into this position. So I don't know that he helps his draft stock by coming back.
Yeah, I think everybody knows who he is at this point. I mean, if you talk to like opposing coaches, they all like refer to him by name, or a lot of them like that nose at Baylor. So he's made his mark, and if he plays, like he did last year and a bit better, you would expect. And yeah, I don't see what's going to really hold him to Waco, quite frankly.
Better chance of getting like Gabe Hall back, even though I think Gabe could blow up this year. But if Gabe only has like 6 sacks this season, there's a great chance he comes back, whereas with Apu, I don't think it's stat reliant.
Yep. Agreed. Baylor Bear 2022, anyone not healthy heading into week 1?
Khalil Keith probably won't, or not probably, he's almost definitely not going to play week 1. Squirrel, we don't know if he'll play. Al, I think Al's going to play. I know he's been dealing with that injury.
Yeah, that was another one that I popped on the message board was Al Walcott's big old cast that he was wearing.
So I don't know if he's going to play. I would think that he would, but I don't know that they need him in game 1. So
yeah, I don't know what, it was he had a basketball cast on his hand. It was just like a big, like a basketball on the end of his fist, the way that it was wrapped up. Now that was like a week ago, so maybe it's, lesser tape at this point, but it was just a big old ball of tape on the end of his hand, so he couldn't even like grip even a little bit. Like when Kalen Barnes had his cast and he could at least kind of move his finger, like this was just a ball of tape. So I don't know how effective that would really leave a cornerback if you can't grab a guy's jersey or do anything, really that you would typically do.
He's playing star now, so maybe
that's true.
Maybe
Yeah, not a lot of coverage, I guess, but yeah, I was kind of wondering about the give and take of that, like how that would work if you only got really one hand to work with. So yeah, we'll see. But he'd be somebody that potentially you could see. But yeah, Squirrel's definitely I would think probably a no-go for game 1. I don't know why you'd throw him out there versus Albany unless you just feel super confident about his knee, and then Khalil Keys, yeah. So outside of that, I don't know that we'll really hear anything from Dave Aranda, until we get to the game and then kind of can cross-check the rosters. Excalibur, you may already be doing about the requests. Podcast link, Grayson already took care of that. Bear in the Big Green House, what's a hot take each of you have for the Big 12 football season? Why do you think it'll come to fruition?
Ooh, hot take. I think the winner of the Big 12 is going to make the college football playoff. That's a hot take, I think, right? Yeah, I think that's a pretty hot take. Why do I think it'll come to fruition?
And why is it Oklahoma?
Yeah, well, I was telling Garrett this. I think last year we saw the first year where a group of 5 team made the college football playoff, and this is going to be the first year where a 2-loss team makes the college football playoff.
Okay.
That's why.
All right. Anybody in particular that you've circled?
Yeah, I think Baylor and Oklahoma are going to play in the Big 12 championship game. Okay. I think both are going to be 10-2 going into that game. So the winner, I think, will give themselves a shot at the college football playoff. I think Baylor will win that game. So they have a shot. But it also goes in line with, I also think Utah will be 11-2 as well. So there'll be kind of a big matchup there. But I think specifically the Big 12, I think they're going to make the college football playoff this year.
All right. That's definitely a hot take. I'm trying to think of one that's like a hot take. I don't know. I feel like I've pretty much said everything on the Big 12, and I don't know that anything is really a hot take at this point. Because I don't have I think TCU's going to suck, and everybody else thinks they're going to win 7 games. Like, I don't have one of those in mind.
Do you think K-State will make the Big 12 championship?
No.
No. Yeah. So then,
no.
Could it be Baylor, Oklahoma State again? A rematch?
It could be, but I'm not as high on Oklahoma State as a lot of people seem to be. Like, I mean, I understand they're going to be good, but I don't know why everybody's just assuming they're going to be as good as last year.
Yeah, I have them 9-3, so a step back. But
yeah, I mean that's a really good year. Yeah, I mean that's a step back, like you said, but that's not that bad. But yeah, but that's not a hot take if they're 9-3.
Yeah,
like
no.
that's not like a massive step backwards. Yeah, I don't really. I mean, I'll say I don't think Steve Sarkisian's on the hot seat at all, but I don't think that's really a hot take.
Do you think Game 1 will win Heisman or anything? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Not in the Big 12. No. I mean, Bijan would probably be your best candidate for that, but I'm not really banking on that because I just don't think he's going to shine enough for him to go win a Heisman and for that team overall. So yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't really have a scorching take at this point that's like all that controversial. Excalibur said thanks to Grayson and Alpha Needle. Has Kyron Jones solidified the QB2 spot?
I think so. I think at this point he is the quarterback 2 going into the year, which is great for him. That's a great sign of positive improvement, which we've seen during the fall. I've been impressed with Kyron. He's really taken that QB2 spot very seriously and rolled with it since Gary left. And I think he's showing the signs that everyone saw, the talent that he had coming out of high school. So he's getting there.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been good to see, him just kind of grow more comfortable. And obviously there's a lot of questions anytime you're talking about quarterback and having to be patient and not winning a starting job and things like that. So I'm sure there'll be more scuttlebutt about Kyron Jones and kind of where he fits in and all that. But yeah, I would expect him to be the first man up if something were to go awry with Shapen. And I think they'd have some confidence in Jones to be able to, play well. So, yeah, I think he's done so, like Grayson said, Alpha Needle, to your point or to your question. And I'm trying to think if I could fit in a hot take, and I'm not coming up with anything. I don't think anything is like all that hot takey. Like, I don't think Sark's on a hot seat. I think he's the coach no matter what happens this year, barring like a scandal erupting.
How bad do you think they'll be? Like that would
I don't
be
think
a
they'll
hot
be bad.
Take. Okay, so
yeah, I think they'll be good. I don't think they're going to be like winning a national title under Ewers in year 1, like some people are acting.
Like 8-4.
Yeah, I think they'll be somewhere in that range.
No. What about no CFP?
I don't think that's a hot take because that's kind of the Big 12's history outside of OU.
Right.
I mean, the hot take is saying they will have somebody besides OU being it because that's never happened before. So, yeah, I don't know what would be hot takey. I don't know. So sorry, I don't have anything, but I'll try to give it some more thought. But yeah, I'm just not a hot take general to begin with, really. So it's not really my forte, but I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of. Anything before we go here, Grayson?
Yeah, we got one more question. I think it came in late from Darth Mellon. And Darth Mellon asks, which is more likely? West Virginia goes 8-4 or Texas goes 5-7?
West Virginia goes 8-4, I think.
I think so too. Texas going 5-7. I just don't see that happening. They have some pretty winnable games on their schedule.
Yeah, I think they've got winnable games on their schedule, and I just think that not making a bowl game in year number 2 would be. That would put Sark on the hot seat. It wouldn't get him fired. It would put him on the hot seat. And I could see that, but yeah, I think I'd lean more towards West Virginia. I think West Virginia might be sneaky pretty good with JT Daniels.
Yeah, their only downside that's tough to get them to 8 is the fact that they got to play Pitt and at Virginia Tech in the non-conference. Like, just a dreadful non-conference compared to some others. So that's the only thing going against them, but 5-7 for Texas. That now, if you told me that was your hot take, that'd be a scorching take. That would be insane.
I don't think they'll be that bad. It'd be great to see it, but their Vegas total's 8.5, so that would be nearly 4 games worse than they're expected to be. That'd be pretty shocking. So yeah, I wish I could say that with confidence, but I don't believe that'll happen. I think they'll be at least a bowl team. And then West Virginia, you're right. That was my little my over under. But I was picking between what them and who was it? TCU, I think.
Yeah.
And TCU, I don't know if they're all set up to just go straight into the bowl season, but I think they'll be an interesting team with Sonny Dykes. I mean, they should be super competitive.
Yeah, I have them going under their win total. Okay. Isn't it at 6.5?
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
that's the one I was looking back on, and that might be a better call than West Virginia going over, actually. But
yeah, it could be. I had posted my bets the other day, and that was definitely one that I'm eyeing. That's a lot of wins for a team that's doing a complete culture shift from defense to offense. And simple fact of the matter, Sonny Dykes, outside of winning at SMU, a non-Power 5 school, he really has not got it done at the Power 5 level consistently.
Well, and they're also very busy having Twitter beef with SMU,
and
based
Tech.
on what I've seen, and Tech. So they're a little preoccupied with the season around the corner. I hope that doesn't distract them too much, but their social media teams have been very busy fighting off bullies. So yeah, that's one I look back on now a few minutes later, and I could definitely go under on TCU 6.5, or I could see that at least. But I'll stick with West Virginia winning more than 5.5, even though that non-con's a little bit daunting. But again, I'm not a Vegas guy, so take that for what it's worth. But I think it'll be close, so we'll see. All right, anything before we go here, Grayson?
No, it's an exciting time, and we're about to really ramp up our coverage starting next week as we get ready to preview Albany. So be sure to check out the premium side. We're going to have all kinds of articles. I mean, Jack and I are having trouble fitting everyone in the schedule. We have just so much content that we're going to put out next week. And then, of course, 365 Sports Radio, y'all are going to have, I'm sure, tons of guests as the season gets rolling. So really excited about that as well. Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 on YouTube.
Yep, and we do appreciate all those who check out all the various offerings across the website. Look very much forward to talking about some games here beginning next week. And then after being able to actually look back on actual performances and who did what and all of that very soon, that's going to be very, very soon. So that's good. And until next time, I do appreciate everybody behind the scenes here making all the magic happen, and appreciate partners, of course, Brian and Ashley and Colt, everything that they've done to give us the opportunity and the platform as well. So good team effort, and a lot of good things in store, as Grayson alluded to. So stay tuned and keep checking back. We'll be back with you next week for another edition of the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com.